So if you're talking Alabama football, your conversation typically revolves around a few different areas, whether that's rate of winning and how often these prospects are getting national championship rings and trophies, or whether we're talking about the rate of development, in which case you're talking about how Alabama is sending these recruits to the NFL in troves, and especially the first round of the NFL draft. But more recently, we've been having conversations about the coaching rehab clinic that Nick Saban has established in Tuscaloosa. And today, we need to talk about a topic that only reinforces that point, because the Crimson Tide are bringing in Todd Grantham as a defensive analyst, and we need to break this down. But before we do, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Are you excited that Alabama is bringing in Grantham as an analyst? And let me know what you're thinking. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification. I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it, and I'm on my push to 15,000 subscribers, and I would love to have you along for that journey. And if you did enjoy the content, like and comment down below. Those interactions are massive to content creators such as myself. But with all that being said, let's hop right into this, because this mirrors a video I made not long ago talking about Ed Orgeron's comments regarding Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide. When Ed Orgeron was asked if he would ever consider joining Nick Saban's staff, Orgeron said absolutely not. And my point in making that video was to point out the fact that the question being asked only highlights the greater point here, and that is what Nick Saban has established in Tuscaloosa for coaches is just as insane as what Nick Saban has established in Tuscaloosa as far as winning college football games and developing players and sending them to the next level. That's the same level of impressive display we are seeing, but from an entirely different standpoint, one that we really don't focus on as college football fans. Everything else is result-oriented in terms of on-field, and we rarely think about result-oriented approaches in terms of coaching staffs coming to an institution and bettering themselves and then showing that after they leave that institution. And that's exactly what we've seen from the Crimson Tide. Whether we're talking about Charlie Strong, Butch Jones, the list goes on and on and on, and most famously we can talk about Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian, individuals who've come in, really helped the Crimson Tide revolutionize and modernize their offenses. Meanwhile, the Crimson Tide have helped get their coaching careers back on track. So Nick Saban has established this coaching rehab clinic in Tuscaloosa that is constantly having its doors revolving, and it's a win-win situation for all parties involved. And make no mistake, Todd Grantham is not separate from that. He is a part of this win-win scenario, and I understand. I have been critical of Todd Grantham's defenses, especially here more recently at Florida, in which case they just weren't performing up to par. However, with that being said, if you're talking about bringing somebody in to your school, to your favorite institution that has 20 plus years of coaching experience, and they tell you that guy's going to be an analyst, he's just going to help us prepare, he's not going to be making calls, he's just going to be spending his time formulating plans. You don't argue with that approach, and because of that, that's why I say this is a win-win for all parties involved. For Alabama, they get someone who's deeply experienced in college football. When we're talking about Todd Grantham, we need to understand that even though this past stint at Florida didn't go well, this is someone who was turning heads through the early portions of their career. Whether we're talking about Virginia Tech, in which case he was a defensive end coach, defensive tackle coach, and a defensive line coach, or Michigan State, where he had a stint with Nick Saban as the assistant head coach and the defensive line coach. But it was in the NFL, and specifically with the Indianapolis Colts, where Todd Grantham's career really took off, because he inherited a defensive line and really took it to the next level. And after that, we saw more of the same in his next stints from Indianapolis to the Houston Texans, in which case he'd inherit this defensive line, and the defensive line production would instantly increase. He went from the Houston Texans to the Cleveland Browns, then the Dallas Cowboys, then the Georgia Bulldogs, Louisville, Mississippi State, and finally the Florida Gators before ending up in Tuscaloosa. So when you look at it from that perspective, not only does he have a deep understanding of SEC football, but he's been and had a lot of time spent in the pros. That right there is awesome. And even if the guy's not making play calls, the fact that he has that deep of an understanding of all levels of highly competitive football, I think is a major net positive. Coming in as an analyst, he gets to help this team in multiple different ways. And having the deep experience and deep understanding of multiple levels of football, and more specifically the SEC that he has, is only going to be a net positive as we as Alabama fans look for this Alabama defense to really make that next jump going into next season, because they have a ferocious unit. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking about this move. That's it. See ya.